Well, hello, Shiny Crafty People. Tim Totten here, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm actually going to be reacting to a video that I watched about this much of already, and then I was so intrigued I thought, I'm going to wait and record it for y'all. And it's called Don't Buy Gift Bags Anymore, Amazing Sewing Trick for Reversible Gift Bags. So it's pushed on the idea of why, the description says why buy gift bags when you can make them yourselves. This is from a channel called Sewing Craft. And this video has like 175,000 views or something like that. So I'm gonna watch it because I like gift bags, and I don't like using them usually because I think they're kind of cheap. And I thought, well, maybe if there's a better way to do it, I can make them, and then it would be something special I made for the gift. So let's go ahead and watch it. So they're taking a regular gift bag and cutting it up. This is one of those videos where they don't really tell you what they're doing. They walk you through it, which I think is fine. It's great for people who don't speak whatever language the person is who's recording it. But they're sort of taking a gift bag apart. So I guess you gotta find the exact gift bag size that you like, and that's the one you're gonna use. And that's cute. They're ironing their paper. I think that's meant to be like a stabilizer or a fusible interfacing. So that's great because you can use this pattern and draw it out. Well, we're gonna pin it together. I mean, I can see why you'd want to use a stabilizer if you're wanting it to be nice and stiff and harder. You wouldn't be able to use the freezer paper hack with this. Like, I would like to use freezer paper because you can kind of iron it down, but you would only really do that on fabric. You could, though, actually, go ahead and stabilize your fabric in advance and then put the freezer paper version straight down on top of the pretty fabric and then cut it out. So they have their fabric here. That's really pretty, actually. I like the look of that. And I don't know which side I'd like to use. I mean, the gold is very pretty on there. So they're ironing it on. That's obviously the stabilizer then. And actually, they're cutting it out a little larger, probably, I guess, here, so they don't use, they don't have all that material in the seams. So they're gonna sew around, and that kind of tells you where you gotta sew. That's kind of nice. Not quite sure why they're drawing all these lines on here. Oh, they're gonna stitch on the lines. That might be to make it easier to fold, like it's kind of perforating that stabilizer, so it's a little easier to fold. And I'll show you on the outside because you're gonna see a stitch on the other side, and you'll be able to tell which way to go, where to fold it when it's done. So that makes sense. I mean, already this is so much longer than it would take to just go to a store and buy a gift bag. So you spent a lot of time so far making this. So here's the part that makes it reversible. Now here's the deal. I guess they're not gonna sew these together, so they're just pinning it on so they can use the same piece or the same design, because they're gonna then split them apart, yeah, and sew them separately. Which is obviously, if you're gonna make it reversible, you're gonna wanna do that. I hope they don't use those raffia handles. Are they gonna wrap them? Oh gosh, please don't. Oh, they're just measuring it. So they're getting a measurement. Here, you can really use whatever size you want. So if you want longer handles or shorter handles, you can adjust that here. That would be fine. I'd be careful how heavy you put anything in here, because this material is actually, the material for those handles is actually pretty, I mean, it's a loosely woven material, so you better stitch it like really good. I mean, they're putting a couple on it, but I'm gonna tell you gotta be really careful because that will rip off. You can't put anything too heavy in this bag. I would use probably a heavier material for the handles myself. All right. Same thing on the other one. You're gonna stitch and then stitch. Okay. That makes sense, right? And the nice part is you have to make sure you line those up properly if you're trying to keep the extra, that heavy stabilizer in there, but that makes sense. Oh, well, okay, so they didn't show that earlier. They didn't show this section here where they didn't stitch. They didn't show that earlier in the video where they showed we're going to stitch down each side. Like here, where is it? They didn't show skipping a hole. So you got to know that. Don't go ahead and start before you actually... Okay, well, that's fine. So they left a hole opening because you're going to turn the whole thing inside out. So that makes sense. So now we're making the box corners. That's fine. Now to see, this inside layer is not stabilized, which is interesting because they're saying this is a reversible bag, but the outside, if you were to turn it inside out and use that white layer for the outside, it's not going to be quite as pretty. Like, okay, it's still good. And that's good. I mean, it does what it needs to do, which is makes that really, and that's a wide seam allowance. Look how big those seam allowances are. Anyone should be able to make this if you're just following lines like that. So they're going to turn this one inside out, which makes sense because then they'll put the other one around it. And it's very pretty fabric. Isn't it pretty? Like, it's actually kind of worth... I don't like gift bags for most gifts because I feel like it just feels lazy to me. This is where you're putting the right sides together. So you see how you're doing that. You've got the lining is out on the outside and the wrong side of it is facing out. Yeah, make sure you tuck those handles in. I don't love gift bags because I feel like they're kind of a cheat, so to speak. It's sort of like, well, you know, I didn't want to actually wrap it. I like wrapping gifts. I like doing it. I like the whole process. Interestingly, though, here I want to talk about the fact, let me go back a second. One of the only things I think is a little strange here is that you'll notice that they didn't, in this section here, they didn't flatten these seams out all the way down. They're not flattened out all the way down, which I thought was interesting. So sort of make sure you got to be careful of the bulk in there. So make sure that the one on the inside, that seam is facing one direction and here on the other direction, because it's going to make it a lot easier for it to go properly. Yeah, that looks good, actually. Okay, very fraying fabric. So if you're going to use fabric like this, make sure you use a wide seam allowance like they did. And now they're sort of birthing it through, which is actually pretty easy to do. Now, there's a little quibble here, and this is I'm gonna tell you right now what they're gonna do. They're not gonna hand stitch this. They're gonna put it together, and then they're just gonna top stitch it, which they did. Or maybe they didn't, I don't know. But what happens is when you turn that inside out, if you turn this whole thing inside out, which I hope they'll show us it turned inside out, you're gonna see that one line where they stitched on the outside rather than going in and hand stitching it. So if you really want to do it nice, you would hand stitch a ladder stitch. Just search YouTube how to do those. Yeah, and they're top stitching all around. That's good because that'll help add more power to those, more strength to those. Oh my gosh, they're ironing it now? Okay. Well, they're ironing along those stitches they made, which is great. Actually, it's very smart they put those stitches in. You really want to reinforce those handles. I still got to tell you, being fabric, you or whoever gets this later and decides to reuse it is going to think you can put 50 pounds of material into this bag because it looks strong, because it's made of fabric, not paper. The problem is those handles are going to rip right off. It's just going to fray right out. You got to use better fabric for the handles. I mean, this is a lot of work. This video is 7 minutes, and I got to tell you, they haven't shown all the amount of time it took to make this. So it would take longer, but I will tell you, it's gorgeous. So that was this really interesting video from Sewing Craft. I really enjoyed it, actually. I'm surprised by how good it is, by how really fun that particular project was, and the fact that you could make them yourself. Make better handles, obviously. If you really want it to be truly reversible, don't stitch that. But, you know, it's a nice way to sort of step up the typical gift bag. Now, I think I might add, it's hard to see because I'm backwards. I might add another strap in there. Like between the two straps, I would add maybe 2 strings that you could then tie together to close this, because it doesn't really close in this way, or maybe a little Velcro or even a snap, because people are going to use this over and over again. Hopefully they realize not to throw it away. And if you do give it to somebody and they are going to toss it, make sure you get it back. Anyway, that's been a really fun video to watch. I will put a link in the description below to the original video so you can watch it yourself. And until next time, I've been Tim Totten. Stay crafty. Bye for now. All right, what other videos do they have?